Welcome back to our channel, Serious Story Sessions. If you like our content and wish to see more from us, please click that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for future videos. Your support means the world to us, and we thank you. Enjoy the video. Now on to today's story. Enjoy. I found out my professor is my biological father, and I have 3 half-siblings in my freshman bio class. My donor-conceived life blew up in front of 120 people, and my mom's lie was exposed. My life has always been just me and my mom. That's it. For as long as I can remember, when I asked about my dad, she'd just sigh. She'd say, "I just don't know, honey." It was a long time ago. He wasn't in the picture. She always made it sound like some one-night stand, a fleeting moment she regretted. I grew up with this story. It shaped how I saw myself. I was the product of a mystery, a fleeting encounter. It was sad, but it was my reality. I accepted it. We weren't rich. My mom worked hard, usually 2 jobs, to keep us afloat. I saw her struggle, and it made me fiercely independent. I focused on school. I wanted to make her proud, to make her sacrifices worth it. College was my goal, my ticket to a better life for both of us. I got into a local state university, nothing fancy, but it was good enough. My mom cried when I got the acceptance letter. It felt like we'd achieved something together. Biology was my major. I was fascinated by how things worked, the hidden mechanisms of life. My freshman year, I signed up for a huge introductory biology class. It had about 120 students. It was one of those classes everyone had to take, so it was a mix of all majors. Early in the semester, the professor, Dr. Miller, announced a unique assignment. We were going to do a basic DNA analysis. He said it would help us understand genetics in a practical way. We'd swab our cheeks, send it off to a lab, and get back a report on some basic genetic markers. He emphasized it was anonymous, just for the class, not for medical diagnosis. It sounded cool, a little sci-fi. Everyone was buzzing about it. I did my swab. It was simple. I sealed the envelope with my student ID number, not my name. Dr. Miller collected them all. We went through a few weeks of lectures on DNA, genes, and heredity. It was interesting stuff, but I didn't think much about my own sample. It was just an exercise. Then came the day Dr. Miller had the results. He projected some graphs and charts on the screen. He was talking about population genetics, variations within the class. It was all very academic. Then he paused. He cleared his throat. "All right, class," he said. "I have something unexpected to share." The room went quiet. He pulled up a new slide. It showed 4 student ID numbers. Mine was one of them. My heart started to beat faster. What did this mean? These 4 individuals, he continued, show an extremely high degree of genetic similarity, far more than random chance. In fact, the probability suggests they are at least half-siblings, if not full siblings. A gasp rippled through the huge lecture hall. I felt a cold dread spread through me. Half-siblings? I was an only child. My mom said she didn't know my dad. This couldn't be right. Dr. Miller looked at the class. "If you see your ID number on the screen, please come to the front after class. I'd like to speak with you." The rest of the lecture was a blur. I couldn't focus. My mind was racing. Who were these other people? How could this be happening? When the bell rang, I slowly gathered my things, my hands shaking. I watched as 3 other students also made their way to the front. 2 guys, 1 girl. They looked as confused, maybe even more so, than I felt. We stood there awkwardly, facing Dr. Miller. He looked serious, but also a little uncomfortable. "All right," he said. "I'm Dr. Miller. I just want to be clear. This is highly unusual. Do any of you know each other? Are you related?" We all shook our heads. "No. Complete strangers." I had barely spoken in the class and knew no one there. "And your parents?" he pressed gently. "Are any of your parents related? Do they know each other?" Again, no. We all confirmed our parents were separate families, different last names, no distant relations or anything. The only similarity is that we were all from the same town. We were locals. That's why we all attended this college. Dr. Miller sighed. He ran a hand through his hair. "Okay. This points very strongly to one possibility. Have any of you been told you were conceived via artificial insemination? Or through a sperm donor?" Silence. The other girl, Sarah, suddenly looked pale. She shook her head slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. One of the guys, Mark, looked down at his shoes. The other guy, David, spoke up, his voice a little shaky. "Yeah, my parents told me a few years ago. They used a donor." Mark nodded. "Mine too," David said quietly. "I didn't think I'd ever meet anyone related to me." My world spun. Artificial insemination? Sperm donor? My mom never said anything about that. My mom said she didn't know who my dad was. Not that he was a medical procedure, not that he was a stranger in a lab. I burst out, "My mom never said anything like that. She said she didn't know who my dad was." I looked at the others and my gaze locked with Sarah. She looked like a ghost now, and the tears were fully falling down her face. My mom and dad have always been my mom and dad. I look just like them. "I don't understand," she said quietly. Dr. Miller looked at me and Sarah with pity. "Well, it seems like you four share the same biological father." My world felt like it was spinning. Dr. Miller explained that sometimes donors contribute to multiple families, and that in large donor pools, it's possible for half-siblings to end up in the same place. The odds of 4 of them being in the same class, though, were astronomical. He said he'd never seen anything like it. He offered to answer any questions, but I couldn't even form them. My head was pounding. I felt sick to my stomach. I just wanted to get out of there. Sarah looked like she was about to collapse. Mark and David, who had known about the donor, were still clearly stunned by the reality of meeting half-siblings. I mumbled something about having to go and practically ran out of the room. I walked all the way back to my dorm, not really seeing anything. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and betrayal. My mom. She lied to me. She didn't just not know my dad. She actively concealed the truth of my very existence. I called her the moment I got to my room. "Mom," I said, my voice trembling, "we need to talk, right now." She could hear the tension in my voice. "What's wrong, honey? Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay," I snapped. "Did you use a donor to have me?" A long silence on the other end. I could hear her sharp intake of breath, then a soft, "Where did you hear that?" "Just answer me, Mom. Did you use a donor?" Another pause. "Yes, honey, I did." Her voice was barely a whisper. My anger flared. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you lie for 19 years? You let me believe this whole story about you just not knowing my father." "It was complicated," she said, her voice cracking. "I just wanted to protect you. I didn't want you to feel different." "Different?" I yelled. "I feel like my whole life has been a lie. I just found out I have 3 half-siblings in my biology class. Mom, in my class." She gasped. 3? Oh my God. That's impossible." "It's not impossible, Mom. Dr. Miller says we share a donor. What else have you lied about?" The conversation devolved into an argument, fueled by my shock and her shame. She eventually admitted that she'd chosen artificial insemination because she wanted a child, and there wasn't a partner in her life. She said she'd picked an anonymous donor. She swore she never meant to hurt me, but the hurt was deep. It felt like she'd stolen my story, replaced it with a fabrication. The next few days were hard. I avoided my mom's calls. I barely ate. I felt adrift, my sense of self completely shattered. I tried to process it. My mom, my rock, my closest confidant, had kept this monumental secret from me. It wasn't just a white lie, it was the foundation of my identity. I decided to meet with Sarah, Mark, and David. We went to a coffee shop off campus. It was awkward at first. Sarah was still reeling. Her parents hadn't told her either. She was furious, planning to confront them that evening. Mark and David were more pragmatic, having processed their own donor stories years ago, but they were still grappling with the unexpected siblings. We talked for hours, we compared notes. Our birthdays were all within a few years of each other. We learned about each other's lives. It was surreal. We were strangers, yet we shared this fundamental connection. We decided to try and find out more about our donor. Mark and David had some information from their parents' clinics, but it was limited. Anonymous was anonymous. I eventually talked to my mom again. She was remorseful, tearful. She begged me to understand. She said she had been young, desperate for a family, and she chose what she thought was best and never regretted it because she had me. She said the clinic promised anonymity. She couldn't have imagined this. I tried to forgive her, but the wall between us felt impossibly high. Every time she spoke, I wondered if it was another carefully constructed half-truth. Over the next few weeks, the 4 of us, the bio-siblings, as we jokingly called ourselves, bonded. We met regularly, studied together, and shared our frustrations and hopes. Sarah had eventually talked to her parents. They told me that my father couldn't have children, that there was a 0% chance he could get my mom pregnant. Sarah told us one afternoon at the coffee shop. My mom didn't care that he couldn't. She loved him. So they decided to do artificial insemination to have me. My mom is fully my biological mom, but my dad, she paused, my dad technically shares no DNA with me. How do you feel about the whole situation now? David asked her. I was pretty upset at first, but it doesn't change anything, not technically. I love my dad, and I'm bummed I don't share DNA with him, but he's still the man that raised me. That won't change, and I'm starting to accept my new reality, Sarah replied. Hearing Sarah come to terms with it all made me reflect more about the arguments I was having with my mother. We found a small online community for donor-conceived individuals. We learned about other half-siblings who had found each other. We even started to wonder if Dr. Miller knew more than he let on, given how quickly he pieced it together. But he maintained it was just a statistical anomaly. One evening, Mark came to our usual coffee shop meeting looking absolutely distraught. Guys, he said, I found something. It's really bad. He had been digging through his parents' old paperwork, trying to find any clue about the donor. He found a binder from their fertility clinic. Tucked away in a file, he found a consent form. It wasn't the donor's name, but it had a unique donor ID and a very specific physical description. Height, weight, hair color, eye color, blood type, even some academic achievements. Okay, I said, so we have a description. That's more than nothing. No, you don't understand, he whispered, his voice shaking. I recognized the description. It's uncanny. It's someone we know. My blood ran cold. Who? He pulled out his phone and showed us a photo. It was a picture of Dr. Miller. We stared at the phone in silence. It was him. The height, the eye color, the slight scar above his eyebrow that we'd noticed. The academic achievements listed on the donor profile matched his university bio. It was undeniably Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller, our biology professor, was our biological father. The shock was immense. It was a double layer of betrayal. My mom lied, and now our professor, who had facilitated this discovery, was also involved. It felt like a sick joke. He had sat there, knowing all along, watching us piece together the biggest secret of our lives. We confronted him after class. We showed him the document Mark found. He looked at it, then at us, his face draining of color. He didn't deny it. He just sat there, defeated. He explained everything. He had been a struggling grad student years ago, and he donated to make some extra money. He was told it was anonymous. He said he had no idea any of his offspring would end up in his class, let alone 4 of us. He said, when he saw the DNA results, he recognized the patterns. He knew. He said he didn't know how to tell us. He didn't want to overstep. He agonized over it, but ultimately decided to let the class assignment play out, hoping we would find each other, giving us the agency to discover the truth. He claimed he wanted us to have the choice to know, rather than him just dropping it on us. He apologized profusely, saying it was a terrible ethical breach on his part. I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. He was clearly remorseful, but his actions were still manipulative. He had played a role in this elaborate deception. But the biggest betrayal still lay with my mother. I went home that weekend. I was furious. I told her everything, about Dr. Miller, about him being our father. My mom just stared at me, her face pale, eyes wide with a horror I hadn't seen since I told her about the car accident I'd been in at 16. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, that's impossible. He was anonymous. They promised anonymity. I threw the printed copy of the consent form Mark had given me onto her kitchen table. Anonymous? Mom, his full description is on here, and it matches him perfectly. He admitted it. He's our professor, Dr. Miller. She picked up the paper, her hands trembling as she read the details, her lips moving silently over the words. The color drained from her face even further. She looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes. I don't understand how this could have happened. They assured me. They said there was no way anyone would ever know. Well, they lied, Mom. Just like you did, I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the silence of the small kitchen. Did you even look at this form? Did you verify anything? Or did you just blindly trust them because you wanted a baby? Of course I trusted them, she cried, the tears spilling over. They were a reputable clinic. They had a whole catalog of donors. I chose someone who seemed intelligent, healthy, who had good grades. I wanted the best for you. And yes, I wanted a baby. I wanted you. More than anything. She gestured around our small, familiar kitchen, the worn countertops, the faded linoleum. I didn't have much to offer, but I wanted to give you life, and I thought I was doing it the right way, the safe way. Her words twisted something inside me. It was hard to reconcile the desperate, hopeful young woman she described with the liar I felt she was now. But you lied about it, Mom. For 19 years. You let me believe some stranger ghosted you, not that you deliberately sought out a donor. Because I was ashamed, she admitted, her voice barely audible. In our town, back then, single women having children through a clinic wasn't common. I didn't want you to be judged. I didn't want you to feel less than, to feel like you didn't have a real father. I was trying to protect you. I still am. Protect me? I scoffed, but the anger felt a little hollower now, tinged with a raw ache. You protected me into a lie that blew up in my face in front of 120 students. A lie that means my professor, my actual professor, is my biological father. The absurdity of it all hit me again, and a choked, mirthless laugh escaped me. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I know I hurt you, honey, and I am so, so sorry. More sorry than I can say. I made a mistake by not telling you sooner. A huge mistake. But I never, not for 1 second, regretted having you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't know what to say. Her pain was evident, and it was genuine. But so was mine. The hurt was still too fresh, too deep to simply brush aside with an apology. I stayed there for a while, silent, letting her cry, letting the weight of everything settle between us. Eventually, I stood up. I need time, Mom, I said, my voice flat. I need to figure out what any of this means. For me. For us. I left her crying at the kitchen table, the consent form still clutched in her hand. The drive back to campus felt impossibly long. My head reeled with her confessions. Her shame. Her desperate desire for a child. It didn't excuse the lies, but it complicated them. The next day, Dr. Miller canceled his upcoming lectures, citing a personal emergency. We all knew what that meant. The university had certainly gotten wind of something. Mark, Sarah, David, and I met in our usual coffee shop haunt, the news of Dr. Miller's absence hanging heavy in the air. So, what do? David asked, stirring his coffee absently. Do we report him? Do we just ignore it? Sarah, usually the most outwardly emotional, seemed calmer now. My parents were livid when I told them about Dr. Miller. They're talking to a lawyer, saying the clinic was negligent, that this whole anonymous donor thing was a sham. My mom's talking to her clinic too, I added, remembering the desperate assurance in her voice. She felt completely duped. Mark, ever the pragmatic one, tapped his fingers on the table. I don't know about legal action yet. I mean, it doesn't change anything for us. He's still our biological father, and he did, in his own messed up way, help us find each other. That's the part that gets me, I said. He knew. He watched us. It's so weirdly manipulative, but also, I wouldn't have known otherwise. My mom never would have told me. We spent hours dissecting Dr. Miller's actions, his motivations, our own feelings. It was a messy knot of anger, gratitude, and profound confusion. In the end, we decided to give him some space, and ourselves too. The university would likely handle any professional repercussions. For us, the question was, what kind of relationship, if any, we wanted with the man who was both our professor and our genetic father. A week later, Dr. Miller returned to class. He looked haggard, his eyes shadowed, but he stood before us, a different man. Before diving into the scheduled lecture on cellular respiration, he cleared his throat. Class, he began, his voice raspy. I owe an apology to the entire class for my recent absence. More specifically, he paused, his gaze sweeping across the room until it briefly met mine, then Sarah's, Mark's, and David's. I owe a profound apology to certain individuals. My actions were unprofessional and ethically questionable. I understand if you feel betrayed. I deeply regret the pain I have caused. He didn't elaborate further, didn't name us, but everyone in that class who had been there for the DNA results knew exactly what he was talking about. The room was silent, thick with unspoken understanding. After class, the four of us approached him. He looked up, his shoulders slumping slightly. If you're here to report me, he said quietly, I understand. I've already submitted my resignation to the department chair, effective at the end of the semester. My stomach dropped. Resignation? This was a much bigger consequence than I'd anticipated. You're leaving? I asked, my voice small. He nodded. It's the right thing to do. I can't in good conscience continue to teach you, knowing what I know and what you know. It wouldn't be fair to anyone. He looked at us, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and something else, something paternal. I want you to know, I truly am sorry for the lies, for the deception, for the pain. I never meant for any of this to happen. When I donated, It was just a way to make ends meet. A young, foolish grad student. I had no idea the implications, that I would ever meet my biological children, let alone teach them. What about after this semester? Mark asked. Will you disappear? Dr. Miller sighed. That's up to you. I won't impose myself, but if, at any point, you want to talk, to ask questions, to know more, I'll be here. I've compiled everything I know about my medical history, my family history. It's all yours if you want it. He handed Mark a small, sealed envelope. No pressure, just information. It was a strange, bittersweet moment. He wasn't just a professor anymore. He was a flawed, remorseful man who was inextricably linked to our very existence. The anger was still there, a low simmer, but it was now mixed with a profound sense of loss for him, and for the simple anonymity we'd once taken for granted. Over the next few months, the bio-siblings became more than a joke. We were family. We spent holidays together when our own families felt too complicated. We leaned on each other, processing the layers of revelation. Sarah's parents, though still angry at the clinic, had embraced the idea of their daughter having half-siblings. They even invited us for Thanksgiving, welcoming us with open arms. David's parents, having already processed their donor story, were fascinated and supportive. Mark's family was also incredibly understanding. It was a chaotic, beautiful expansion of our worlds. My relationship with my mom was harder. I didn't cut her off completely, as part of me had desperately wanted to do in the immediate aftermath, but a chasm had formed. I couldn't look at her the same way. Every conversation felt guarded, every word weighed. She kept trying to bridge the gap, sending me texts, calling, visiting. She was still my mom, the woman who had sacrificed everything for me, who had loved me fiercely, but the foundation of our trust had fractured. One evening, after a particularly draining phone call with her, I found myself talking to Sarah. I just don't know how to get past it, I confessed. The lies, the years of believing a fantasy. Sarah listened patiently. It's a huge thing to forgive, she said softly. And you don't have to rush it. But remember what she said. She wanted you more than anything. My mom wanted a child with my dad, even if he couldn't biologically be the father. Yours wanted you. It doesn't make the lies okay, but maybe it explains the depth of her desire to protect that dream, for both of you. Her words resonated. My mom's love wasn't a lie. Her sacrifices weren't a lie, only the origin story. The realization was a slow, painful balm. I started to see her not just as the betrayer, but as a complex woman who made a desperate, flawed choice out of love. It didn't heal everything, but it opened a crack in the wall. Dr. Miller finished out the semester. His classes were subdued, but he taught with a quiet dignity, still brilliant, still passionate about biology. On the last day of class, he lingered, watching us go. Mark, David, Sarah, and I walked past him. He simply nodded, a silent acknowledgement. We didn't talk to him, not then. The time for that kind of conversation still felt distant. The university semester ended, and with it, the chapter of Dr. Miller as our professor. He moved away from town, to a new university, a fresh start. But he didn't disappear entirely. He kept his promise, maintaining a quiet, email-based contact with us, answering questions we occasionally sent, providing the information he had. It wasn't a father-child relationship, not yet, but it was a bridge, an acknowledgement of the shared truth. My bond with Mark, David, and Sarah, however, deepened into an unbreakable connection. We were linked by more than just DNA. We were linked by a shared experience of profound revelation, of finding family in the most unexpected way. We were the bio-siblings, a new, unconventional family born out of a biology assignment. The anger I held for my mom began to soften, slowly, painstakingly. I started calling her back more often. I went home some weekends. The conversations were still raw sometimes, filled with unspoken truths and lingering resentments, but they were conversations. I realized that my mom was not defined by this one monumental lie, but by a lifetime of love and sacrifice. Forgiveness wasn't a single event, but a gradual, ongoing process. My life wasn't the simple narrative I'd grown up with. It was messy, complicated, and full of unexpected turns. But it was also richer, expanded by 3 siblings I never knew I had, and by a deeper, more nuanced understanding of love, truth, and the bewildering complexities of family. I was still me, the fiercely independent girl who wanted to make her mom proud, but now I was also the daughter of a donor, a sister to three incredible people, and someone who understood that sometimes even the deepest lies can stem from the deepest love. My identity wasn't shattered, it had simply evolved, becoming something far more intricate and resilient. It was my reality, and finally, I was starting to accept it, all of it. If you enjoyed this kind of content, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next batch of stories. See you all next time. Goodbye for now.